Hello everybody, Robert Rambles here and welcome to World of Warcraft Classic. In today's video we're going to talk about choosing a main character for the Burning Crusade Classic. And as we all probably know by now, that game comes out on June 1st, so as of the 18th of May we'll be able to get into the pre-patch. That's going to open up the two new races, the Blood Elves and the Draenei. Now my original plan, maybe like many of you, was to level a Blood Elf. I was going to level a Blood Elf Paladin. We were going to get that to max level in time for the Dark Portal to open, but that's not going to happen now. Now that Blizzard has decided that we're only going to have 2 weeks of pre-patch, I've kind of had to go back to the drawing board and figure out, of my existing characters, which one am I going to want to take into the Burning Crusade? And it's weird because I haven't thought about it at all. I've been so set on leveling up a Blood Elf Paladin and taking that in to the Burning Crusade that I didn't give many of the other characters much thought. I knew eventually one of them would be an alt. And I wasn't sure what would happen with the rest, so I hadn't really had to think about it. And now here we are, having to think about it. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm just going to take a look at each of the characters that I have, and kind of talk about what I think might be their strengths, and the positive effects of taking them, specifically, into the Burning Crusade. So let's start off with the Hunter here. In the Burning Crusade, Hunters have one of the highest DPS potential. I say potential because obviously it depends on how good you play the class. It probably depends on things like your gear and your talent choices, etc. But as far as raw DPS potential, Hunters are way at the top of the list, if not at the very top. And other things that a Hunter is going to bring to a group is that we're going to be responsible for CC with Ice Trap. We're going to be misdirecting threat onto tanks during AoE pulls in dungeons and raids. Very important job. Also going to be kiting, so anytime an enemy needs to be kited, as a Hunter, we are the one to do that job. So high DPS, lots of other usefulness in a group setting, which I like. I like having other things to do besides just crank out DPS. So the Hunter is definitely up there near the top of the list of potential classes that I would take into Burning Crusade. Now, to be quite honest, and if any of you guys have watched my playthroughs in the past, you'll know this about me, I don't really love pet classes. I don't really get into the pet, I don't get into it from a fantasy standpoint. I don't really enjoy collecting a bunch of different pets. As you can see, we've had the same bear here for 30 levels, basically. So I feel like, from that side of things, I'm not the person who would enjoy the Hunter class the most. I don't know if I'd be getting the most enjoyment out of the class compared to someone else who is really into pets and collecting pets and things like that. But that being said, as far as a ranged DPS, the Hunter is a very good choice, very solid. And then of course we have the Priest. This might be at the top of my list, personally, for classes that I would want to take into Burning Crusade. Of the classes that we currently have going, the Priest is way up there. I've been a raid healer since Wrath of the Lich King raids, and that's the primary role that I filled. I do love healing. I like being useful to a group in that way. And the Priest in Burning Crusade, I believe, is the best, or one of the best, healers, obviously. Priests typically fill that role of just being the top healing class as far as like basic throughput. You know, sometimes other classes will have some utility that the Priest doesn't have. But I'm pretty sure for Burning Crusade, from what I've looked at, Priest and Shaman are the highest rated for healing classes. The other good thing about the Priest is that in Burning Crusade they reworked Shadow. And they did it in such a way that actually makes Shadow viable as a DPS spec, whereas in Vanilla Classic it really wasn't. We get things like Vampiric Embrace. We get the ability to restore mana to the party, so that's a huge utility, having a skill that will restore mana to the entire party. They were actually nicknamed a mana battery, Shadow Priest were. And so that's good to know that we have a backup DPS spec that is going to be a ranged spec. So that's the good things about the Priest. High healing potential, decent DPS spec with the changes made to Shadow and Burning Crusade. Next, let's talk a little bit about the Warrior. So the Warrior is near and dear to my heart, specifically this one, but the Warrior in general. This was the first character that I leveled in Classic, and in original Vanilla, 15 years ago, the Warrior was the first character that I leveled, actually leveled. I got my original Tauren warrior to endgame in Burning Crusade. He started off in vanilla, but he didn't hit level cap until Burning Crusade. So the warrior as a class has a lot of sentimental value to me. I loved tanking dungeons in Burning Crusade. I probably still remember some of the more tricky pulls from some of the heroic dungeons, because we had to do them so many times to try to get the bold gear to drop for the warrior dungeon sets to get into raiding. And so part of me says, yeah, we could definitely take our warrior here into the Burning Crusade and we could do some tanking. I just don't know if tanking is something that I want to do in raids, because a big part of my plan for the Burning Crusade is to see all the raid content. I didn't get to raid originally in Burning Crusade. Even though I was 20 at the time, I was still kind of a noob. I had started late in vanilla, and that's when we leveled the warrior up and got him to level cap in Burning Crusade. Got pretty much geared out for raiding, had most of my bold set, but never really got there. Had other things going on in life. It was not easy at that point to get into raids. Raid groups were pretty well established on my server, and not knowing many people playing in game, it wasn't easy to conceive of getting into those raids. But this time around, I really want to do that. I just don't know if tanking is the role that I want to fill. So that would be my only hesitation about taking the warrior into Burning Crusade, is that I don't know if I want to tank raids on it or not. That would be something I'd have to consider. But it's definitely a strong possibility. The other good thing is that Arms and Fury are both pretty decent DPS specs. Obviously, they don't compete with classes like the Hunter or the Warlock as far as raw DPS potential. And obviously there's the predisposition towards melee, that, you know, melee is kind of a liability. I don't really know how true that was in BC, but I feel like it's always been the case that people would prefer to have range DPS over melee DPS. So even though they can put out some decent DPS, I don't know if they would have a raid spot or as much of a potential for a raid spot as a ranged class would have. And continuing on, we could talk a little bit about the Mage. So this Mage is a Forsaken Mage. This would put us on the Horde. So for Horde, I would probably play on Mancrick's server. And for Alliance, I would stay on Westfall. So this would require a server transfer to get onto a Horde realm. And the Mage is in the top 3 DPS for Burning Crusade classes. So very viable as a straight up damage dealer. We have 3 different ways to deal damage. We have some pretty solid CC as well with Sheep. And we bring Intellect to the table. So we bring that much needed buff. So probably a really solid class if all I wanted to do was DPS. I kind of hesitate to play a straight DPS class in the Burning Crusade because I like filling other roles. I like being able to tank or heal dungeons. I have a lot of experience as a raid healer. So bringing something like a Mage in would be very different for me. Focusing just on that raw damage output. I've never really been the kind of player to focus on getting my DPS as high as possible. So that would be a little bit of a change, but it could be an exciting one. Then there is the Druid. A little bit about the Druid that I found early on is that I think I find the Druid class in Classic pretty boring. That's just my assessment. That is not how everyone experiences this class, but that was my experience with it. And I think that part of that, like having a smaller ability rotation, might be a side effect of having so many different things that you can do. So having the ability to be a ranged or melee DPS, or tank or heal, I think that affects how many buttons you have overall. And then that kind of made the rotation seem a little bit less than some other classes filling a similar role. That being said, Druid healing is really good from what I understand in Burning Crusade. And I did some Druid healing in Wrath of the Lich King, and I really loved it. That's some of my favorite experiences in raiding was on the Druid. So that is something to think about as far as being a class that has a lot of versatility in any situation, but just with the knowledge that some of those roles you're not going to perform as well as another class. Then of course we have the Paladin. So you might ask me, hey Robert, you were going to play a Blood Elf Paladin. That was your plan until Blizzard changed their plans. Why not just play a human Paladin? That is definitely an option, and it's high on my list of potential options to play. Part of wanting to play a Blood Elf Paladin was that just kind of nostalgia a little bit. My main has always been a Blood Elf Paladin since like midway through Wrath onward. I've mained a Blood Elf Paladin. So for me, it was kind of a nostalgia thing. I wanted to see the new zones in TBC, see the starting areas, and just level up that fresh character, that Blood Elf Paladin, that I probably would have lived on going forward through subsequent expansions. So yeah, definitely taking this human Paladin and getting them through the Dark Portal, that is definitely something we can do. Paladins are great. I mean, we would be able to tank, we'd be able to heal, we'd have a decent DPS. They did make a lot of changes to the talent trees that would let a Paladin do some more DPS than they could do in Classic. I don't think that I'd be comfortable joining a raid as a Paladin DPS. I don't think that they put out... I'm pretty sure they're at the bottom of DPS rankings. But as far as soloing content, maybe even 5-mans, you could probably get away with doing DPS on a Paladin. But the main attraction here is just being able to tank or being able to heal. The other great thing is, because of the way items get their stats, is that when a piece of plate drops and it has intellect on it, there's no one else who's going to be able to get that. You don't have to roll against anybody. And I remember this being really great all the way through Cataclysm, was that if you're the Paladin in the group and a piece of plate drops with intellect, it's yours. Even if you're not healing, you take it for off-spec, and it becomes really easy to build that healer set of gear because literally no one else is going to use that gear. Now, you think about healing on a priest, and if you're a priest healer, you're going to be in a group with mages, you're going to be in a group with warlocks, these other classes that also wear cloth. And some of that gear might have some crossover, so that might be something to consider. Is it going to be easier or harder to get gear if it's cloth as opposed to if we're looking for plate healing gear? I don't know. But yeah, this is definitely high on the list. I would say definitely an option for us. And on to our little Warlock here. The Warlock in Burning Crusade is a great DPS class. It ranks right up there with the Hunter as far as potential DPS. I found the class interesting. I do like some of the complexity of it. The one problem I have with it is kind of the same problem I have with the Hunter, is that I don't really like pet classes. I don't really like having to manage a pet and worry about what a pet is doing in a group or in a raid. I'm not always as observant of my pet and its actions as I should be. And so that's kind of the one thing that rules Warlock out for me, is that yeah, I love the fantasy of a Warlock. From what I've seen of the class, the rotations, I would really enjoy it. It does a lot of DPS. It brings a lot to the table from a utility standpoint with health stones and the various pets you can pull out that do specific things. So incredibly useful class, incredibly powerful class. I just don't know if it's for me, being a person who doesn't care for managing a pet. And lastly, a character that was created but never actually played on the channel is our Shaman. So Shaman are really powerful healers in the Burning Crusade. They rank right up there with priests. So the great thing about the Shaman is you have two different ways you can DPS. You can do it from ranged, you can do it in melee, and you can heal. So that's all great. Don't have a lot of experience on the Shaman, obviously, in Classic, as you can see. But it is a very powerful healer, and it does have a ranged DPS class. Now, looking at the DPS rankings for Burning Crusade classes, it comes in 4th. You know, so it's about midway through. It would be something that would be very useful in raids, obviously. Bringing Bloodlust and some other utility in the form of your totems would be really useful to groups. And having the option to heal or DPS is always good. So it's still on the table. It doesn't really rank up there high in my potential choices just because I haven't played a lot of it in Classic. I've played a bit of a Shaman in retail, but obviously it's very different. And so if I had to rank these from top to bottom, it would probably look something like this. I think that the Priest is at the top of my list. as far as existing classes that I have that I would bring into the Burning Crusade, followed by the Paladin. I'm going to switch these two, followed by the Warrior, and then everything else after that is kind of even for me. But these would be my top 3, guys. It's really hard to choose. It was much easier in my mind when I knew I was leveling up a Blood Elf Paladin. Everything that's changed since then has made it a lot harder to decide on. And so we're basically going to have 2 weeks, and 2 weeks will be enough time to get any character to cap and get its professions to where they need to be to start doing the Burning Crusade professions once we go through the Dark Portal. So that's not a big deal. I just don't think that we would be able to level from level 1 to 60 in 2 weeks. I don't think anybody should try to do that or want to do that at this point. I think it would be a little bit ludicrous to burn yourself out in that way, and I don't plan on doing it. So this is what I'm working with. I want to hear from you guys what you think about these classes. What would you want to see me take through the Dark Portal? What are you most interested in when we're thinking about the fact that we are going to be doing heroic dungeons? We're going to be doing all the raids. What do you want to see through all of that content? Do you want to see a human priest, a human paladin, a night elf warrior? Really want to hear from you guys. Please let me know. I'd also want to know what you guys are playing in the Burning Crusade Classic. What choices have you made, and why have you made those choices? Really would love to hear that. I think I can learn a lot from your guys' experience and thoughts, so let me know. As always, thank you guys so much for being here with me today. Really appreciate all the support. Take care of yourselves out there, and take care of each other. And we will see you through the Dark Portal sometime really soon. Bye now.